Brethren, it's so good to be with you tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to share the Word and let you know what's going on in your back door. You know, it's very far over there to Micronesia, but it feels like the back door of Hawaii because you are one of the closest congregations to us out there. There's a congregation in Pohnpei, and there are others along the other parts of Micronesia. We've got you here, and then here, and then we are here, and then you've got Melanesia and Polynesia. So we're just right here. So when it comes to people who are close to us, you are some of the closest to us, and so we feel connected to you that way. And of course, we're working with the people who are in Guam, the Chamorros there, and then there are. Is it the microphone?
Yeah, I think it is.
It's probably because I've got it in my pocket and the antenna is off. So if I just walk around like this, we'll probably be all right. The people that we have in Guam and in Palau and Chuk, you have them here. You have a great many Chukis here, a great many Palauans here, and so we feel kindly connected to you that way as well because we're loving and ministering to the same groups of people. So that's good. We visited this congregation. It may have been 10 years ago, but we were going through one time, and we came on a Sunday, and we came and worshipped here. And otherwise, since that time, we've had Kailua as one of our supporters, and so now when we're here every 2 years, we've been reporting over there. So it's really good to be with you tonight. Well, let me get right in because I've got more to share with you than I have time to share. Many things happening over in the islands. And these are some ancient pictures of Palau. Brethren, the islanders, both the Palauan and Chukis, and the Chamorros, are concerned about their history and their traditions going off into fading away because many of the teenagers don't know a lot of the Palauan words. Don't know a lot of the Palauan words, and so they're concerned about losing their language. The older people speak Palauan fluently, but these teenagers, when they try to talk to them, well, they don't know enough words maybe to carry on the full conversation. And so it's a little bit of a challenge. And the older people are worried about their traditions and their fables. You know, in the mainland, we have Babe the Big Blue Ox and Paul Bunyan and Johnny Appleseed, Pecos Bill. Well, in Palau and Chuk, they also have their fables and their stories that they want to hold on to those things, but are they going to go the way of the language and start to disappear also? And so they really try to preserve those things, and I want to share one of them with you tonight. In fact, this morning someone was telling me that there's a Hawaiian fable that's very similar to the one I'm going to share with you now. This is Melek the giant firebird in Palau. There was a shark fisherman who was out fishing for sharks, and a great giant bird came down and grabbed one of the I will feel like a rock star doing a microphone like this. I know I've really got you wondering what he grabbed in the water, don't I? The giant bird came down, grabbed one of the sharks out of the water, and took off in the sky. The shark fisherman was so amazed by what he saw, such a giant bird, he went over to the land and drew a picture of the bird in the sand. But unbeknownst to him, the bird came down behind him and turned into a man. The shark fisherman turned around, saw him, and they visited. He invited him to his house for breakfast. And so when they got there, the bird who had turned into a man saw the shark fisherman's baby over in the corner, turned back into a bird and leapt toward the baby. The shark fisherman, thinking fast, grabbed a burning stick out of the fire, threw it at the bird, caught his wings on fire, and the bird took off across the sky, a great beacon of light shooting across the sky. And so today, when the Palauans see a shooting star, they say, oh, just like Melek the giant firebird. Well, that's one of their fables. Well, this afternoon, I want to take you to Chuk with me. We're going to go on a tour together of the main island of Moan there in Chuk and shoot across the sky. And so we're going to see some video and be able to let you see what it is really like there on that island and what it is like working with the churches there on the island of Chuk. Palau Guam would be like Hawaii. It's a first world place. Palau would be like a second world place, and Chuk most definitely is a third world kind of place. And so here we have the airport and the runway. If they overshoot the runway, then it's in the water. There's no other choice. It happened last year, actually. We're going to go down the road and come to the Namon Church of Christ, and this is the building there. And then we're going to go around the Horn, the southern tip of the island, and go out to the Ebenut Church of Christ building. And then we'll go back the way that we came, up to the top of the mountain there in Chuk to the Miari congregation, and it meets in a home. The other two have church buildings, but that one meets in a home. The other two have church buildings, but that one meets in a home. And so this will be the tour. So here we go. And brethren, we're going to go through the town area first, and then most of this island is what you might call the bush. And so we'll be out of town very quickly and be out into the bush area. Brethren, you have an advantage over almost all of those that we are able to share the work with because you're here in Hawaii and you know the islands. You're more familiar with them than people on the mainland. And so there's something, though, that I need to tell you, and that is that Palau and Chuk are very, very different from one another, like night and day. I'm trying to stand where I can not be blocking your view of the video. They are different from one another, brethren, like night and day. It's amazing. They do not share the same language. They do not share the same history. They do not share the same fables and stories. They're just different. And so these islands will be that different from you as well. Even though you may know some of the people here, still you will find it to be a different world as we go through the talk tonight. One of the things that I want to share with you is that here in Chuk, the people have a different view of foreigners than they do over in Palau. Testing. I can talk loud enough to not use it.
Yes, that might work.
Okay.
Or you can use the microphone.
Or I can use the microphone. I want everyone to be able to hear me. So, but I can't be stuck behind that microphone, so let me just walk and talk with you, okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, very good. No comments after the service about a big mouth or something. You just leave that, and we'll leave that there. The brethren here in Chuk really have a different relationship with the foreigners, and it's what you might typically find a lot of times in a third world country. And brethren, they're very, very shy. They're very shy. They maybe feel self-conscious about someone being from the first world and then them being from a third world kind of situation. And so if you were to go with me and we go to Chuk, then the first thing that you'll find is that the people are just closed. And it's not because they're being ugly. No, not at all. These are good-hearted and wonderful people. It's because they are guarded and because you're from a first world place and they're not. If we go and we're going out to Ebenut and it has rained at all or looks like it was going to rain, we'll take the boat to go around because you can't get back going up those hills in a two-wheel drive vehicle. So the road is just very, very poor. So brethren, after we get there, then what we might do is go out and visit a man who's named Sepeta and lives out there in Ebenut village. He's a friend of mine, and we've had many Bible studies together, but he's not yet baptized. And so if we go and talk with Sepeta, we might sit outside of his house, and one of the first things that we're going to do is just talk to him. Now, the people out in Ebenut, most of them, well, none of them that I know of have running water in their homes, and they also don't really have power. They have enough money to really just buy food for the family. But if they're going to buy power, then they'll have to pay $1 and take the truck taxi right in the back of the truck taxi to town, go to the prepaid power office there, and they might buy power, maybe $6 to $10 worth of power. Might do that once a month, maybe, if there's some extra money after buying food. 95% of their money will go toward that food. But Sepeta, he has going into his house, he has power. But brethren, it's two little lines. There's not a ground. It'll just be the hot and then the return, and that's it. And so he's got the 2 little lines coming off the pole into his house, and he'll buy maybe $6 to $10 worth of power at a time. And what they'll use that for is at night only to light up 1 light bulb and 1 fan. And they'll tell the children, don't run it any other time. We're going to use this at night. It'll be more comfortable at night. And so they'll save it for that reason. But many of the wonderful Chuukese people are in that kind of a situation. But brethren, they get pirated movies out of the Philippines. And so they know buildings like this. They've seen it. And there are a few similar buildings to this in Chuuk, but not very many. And so that's the reason that they'll be closed off when you and I go and visit with them. Because they know that we don't have just 2 little lines. We have the 3 lines inside the paper, inside the sheath. And can you imagine how many feet of that line is in this building alone? Much less your house, much less one section of this island, one town area, or the whole island. And we're only talking about power line alone. And so that's why when he sees those movies, and then he sees his house, and then we come and visit, well, it's closed. So, brethren, what we've got to do is to break that down. That's no good, because we've got to be able to have open lines of communication with him and the others. When we go through the Bible studies, and we get to the baptism part, and maybe he's got an objection to being baptized for some reason, we need him to be able to verbalize that to us. We've got to be open enough with him and us to where he can tell us what's on his mind. If we never visit with him and talk with him and break that barrier down, then we won't be able to accomplish the goal of getting him baptized and then growing in the faith afterwards. And so that's one of the unique things that we run into there in Chuuk, and it's with every single one that we meet. And the way we overcome it is to just sit and visit and talk for a little while. About nothing, about anything that comes up. We're going to work in some spiritual things, and we're going to work toward a Bible study, but we've got to do this first so that we can really communicate with the people. We've got to show them that we love them, right? We've got to show them that we love them and that we're just normal, common people, and then we can start taking those next steps forward. And so if you go with me, we're going to strive to imitate Christ, imitate Paul, so that they can imitate him in us as well. You see the breadfruit? You have breadfruit here. Mainlanders don't know what that is. You know what it is. That's a breadfruit. And so, brethren, it's a good thing that's going there in Chuuk. The churches are growing. The brethren are growing in faith. And we are always looking forward to being able to continue the Bible studies out there. We'll go to the church building, get there at about 10 o'clock in the morning, call out one side, Bible study, call out the other side, Bible study, and then wait about 20 minutes. Now, we've told them we'll be there at 10, but never mind. It's island time. And when we yell out the window, that's the time that they roll over, start getting ready to come. Okay? So very much island-style thinking, and we love it, and you know how that goes. Well, speaking of island-style thinking, here's another example of it. After we go to Epidoo, then we'll go, you and I, then we'll go back to town, and we'll go to this building. You say, well, what is that? Well, you don't know what it is, because there's no sign out front to tell you what it is. And that's that island-style thinking. This is the second best restaurant on the island of Moan there. It's the Layside Restaurant. But they don't have a sign because everybody already knows. The owner will be thinking, everybody already knows this is Layside. So why put up a sign? Why go to the time involved with it? Why go to the money involved with it? Because we're not really advertising for the tourists. Yeah, they come and they dive the World War II wrecks, but they stay in the hotels. And so this is a local restaurant, and all the locals know we're here. So why put up a sign? Very relaxed, island-style thinking. And the funny thing is, that very relaxed island-style thinking comes to affect our spiritual work in the church very much. We have to understand the people, right? We've got to go to the people where they are, have to understand where they are. Well, that's partly where they are. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we've got to understand it. Here in Namon, this is the Wichifin in Christ on Namon, Chuukese for Church of Christ in Namon. And so I was picking up on this particular Sunday, I was picking up sister, and I had committed to several different brethren. I'll pick you up, you up, you up, you up at this time, and I filled up the car in the plan. Well, then the sister in the sunflower dress close to us, she brought a visitor. Well, I didn't have room for the visitor, so I said, well, I'll have to drive these guys out to Naaman, drop them off, and then come back to town to get the other brother I'd committed to pick up. And so we drove out there, and the visitor's the lady in the black dress. I was looking to just get a recording of two ladies walking up to the church building, but notice with me what she does. She stops and looks at several things along the way. The brethren have been making a driveway up the mountain there, and it rained, and the mud came down, and what she's having to do is to step over mud puddles and plan her footing so she doesn't sink down in. She's got her good Sunday dress on. She has her Sunday flip-flops on. You know the difference in Sunday flip-flops and regular flip-flops, right? Okay? She's got her Sunday flip-flops on. And then she stops and looks at the grass. The grass is knee-high. I had asked the brethren to cut the grass. They didn't. They may have just forgotten. That's not uncommon. They may have run out of gas for the weed eater. They call it a bush cutter. But either way, it's not cut, and it looks bad. And brethren, in Chuk, they have a habit of, if they've eaten something that's out of a wrapper, just to drop it wherever. And it might be dropped in the yard of their house. It might be dropped in the yard of the church building. It might be dropped inside their house, just on the concrete floor. It might be dropped inside the church building, just on the concrete floor. Because that's their habit, and that's what they've done for years and years. I remember growing up in North Arkansas in the early 80s. My father and I had gotten some McDonald's, and afterwards put all the trash inside the bag. He rolled the window down and threw it out the window. This is before there was littering laws that were enforced anyway. And I looked out the window, and it was just strewn with trash all up along the way. Now since then it's all cleaned up. People don't do that. But that's what they did then in that place. Well, this is what they do here in Chuk. And after a couple of weeks, that wrapper will have been stepped on enough that it's been pushed down into the dirt, and it's just gone forever. And that's what they do. And so she was seeing that also. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, well, now she's Chukese, so these things should not affect her so much. She knows island thinking, and she has that kind of thinking. But then again, she's stopping and really observing this place. And is she thinking these people don't take care of their building? Is she thinking that? And so I'm concerned it's a visitor. This is one of my prospective Bible studies. I want this to go well. I'm already going to be late. I got to go drive back to town. So I go over to her and I say, and I'm just as gentle as I can possibly be when talking with them. Because of the cultural difference, it's far too easy for me to be offensive or something I say that's going to be taken wrong. So just as gentle as I can be. I'm very sorry. The grass is high. Maybe they ran out of gas. And I'm very sorry. The mud, the rain washed the mud down and it's muddy outside. And she said, that's okay. In the culture, she would never say anything different. She says, that's okay. And I said, I'm sorry. I've got to go back to town and to pick up some people there and then drive. We're going to be a little bit late. She said, that's okay. And so I'm trying to save as much time as I can. And then I'm starting on the way out the building, and I realize that Torrin and Matlin are not there. I had asked Rakenta to pick up Torrin and Matlin, but they're not there. I said, Rakenta, did you go get Torrin and Matlin? She said, no. I said, okay, we'll go get Torrin and Matlin, and I'll go get Anthony, and we'll meet back here. She said, okay. So she goes to the car, comes right back. Joey, there's a flat tire. I said, okay, well, here we've got a picture of the grass and a picture of the hillside, and this is the car. It's a Booney car. You know Booney car? Well, this is a Booney car, okay? And so she says, Joey, there's a flat tire. I said, okay, we'll go down. Bara, right here, has a little, her family fixes cars. They have an air compressor about 50 yards down the road. So we'll wheel down to Bara's, fill it up. It's a slow leak. Fill up the tire, and then go get Matlin and Torrin. She said, okay. So she wheels down there. She wheels right back. Joey, the air compressor's broken. I said, okay, all right. Well, I'll go get Anthony, and then I'll go get Torrin and Matlin, and then we'll meet back here, and we'll just be a little bit later still. So, brethren, we did, and had the worship service, and all went well. The visitor, when I picked her up and brought her to worship services, she was silent as a mouse. She had that wall that I was talking about earlier. That wall was up. But on the way back home, brethren, she talked non-stop. It was very unique. She talked nonstop. And she didn't talk about the trash. And she didn't talk about the mud or the mud puddles or the grass or anything like that. She talked about how much she enjoyed the worship service. And here's why. It's very different than what she's hearing in the denominations. In the denominations, they've got that island style thinking. Whatever's easier, that's what they're going to do. Stand up and tell stories. But brethren, in the church, that's not what we do. We use lots of scripture usually in the lessons in the church. We establish what we believe by the scriptures and use that as the starting point and the ending point. And that's different for her. And she loved it. And that's what she talked about all the way back home. Well, after we have the worship service there in Naaman, we'll go up the mountain to Miari. And there's a cliff on this road. And nobody wants their car going up there because there's a good danger of the road giving way and the car go rolling down the cliff. So you and I, as we go on this trip, we've rented a car. And the owner of that car would not think favorably about us driving it up to Miari. So if we want to rent it again, we better park it and then walk on up there. About a 15-minute hike on a fairly steep grade to go up there. But brethren, the church up in Miari, they are new Christians. And they are needing the very basics of the teaching. And so we will talk to them about the importance of worshiping every Sunday. We'll talk to them about the importance of preparing the Lord's Supper beforehand. They can't wake up and say, oh, I forgot the Lord's Supper, and then make it. They've got to bake the cracker. They've got to have grape juice. Now, in recent years, last 2 years, we've been able to buy grape juice in Juke. But that doesn't mean the brethren can afford it, and they really can't. And so what they do to make the grape juice, now it has to be 100% grape juice. So what they do to make the grape juice is they'll half drink a bottle of water, and then put raisins in that bottle of water. Give that bottle to a kid and let him shake it for about 20 or 30 minutes. And then they'll take the raisins out of that bottle of water, juice them. They've been rehydrated now, you see. And so they'll juice them, and then they've got grape juice to work with. And it's something they can afford. Did I mention, not one of these brethren have a refrigerator. None of them. And so they can't buy a bottle of grape juice and say, well, we'll use it for the month. Even a little one. And we'll use it for a month. They can't do that. And they can't afford to buy the bottle every Sunday with the contributions. So we take them where they are and move forward with it. And that's what's happening there in Jude. Brethren, we spend a lot of time with each and every one who is baptized. We sometimes will even ask them to wait about baptism because we want to make sure that they are truly converted and they're going to be dedicated to the church. This young lady here, she was baptized, and her friend, they wanted to be baptized after just 2 Bible studies, which is very rare. Usually, the rule of thumb is that the Jukies change, but they change very slowly. So we have to have a lot of Bible studies and a lot of convincing. Well, these ladies wanted to be baptized after just 2 Bible studies. But brethren, there's a problem with that. And that is if they get baptized, if it's too easy a decision to get baptized, oftentimes it's too easy a decision to step out of the church. We want them to really consider what they're doing and plan on they're going to be at the worship service every Sunday. They're going to be growing in faith. Jesus told us to do that. Here in Luke 14, 28 to 33, he told us to count the cost. Count the cost of being a Christian. And this is what I can tell you. When we started doing this and we started spending more time with them before the baptism, our retention rate went up incredibly. And so we spend time before the baptism and after the baptism in order for people to have the best chance possible of staying faithful. I've got to move a little bit faster because we're running out of time. We get them involved with teaching and preaching right away so that they are growing. And I want to tell you about Joey. Joey is another Jukies man. I met him in a taxi, invited him to come to the Bible classes. Usually people don't come if I do that, but he did. He came to the Bible class, and when it was time for me to head back to Palau, we lived in Palau at the time. When it was time for me to head back to Palau, I said, well, Joey, when I come back, I want to study some more. He said, great. I said, okay, well, he said, there's a problem, though. I said, what? He said, I don't live on Mo, and I live on Panawat. I said, oh, okay, well, where's Panawat? It's a good distance off to the west. I said, well, Joey, what's your cell phone number and I'll call you. They will usually have a small, cheap cell phone they can get at the telecom for maybe $30. So they'll usually have that, not all of them. I said, well, there's no cell tower on Conway. I said, okay, well, I need to let you know I'm coming, so what's your regular landline number and I'll call you. He said, there's no phone service on Conway. I said, well, Joey, all right, then we'll just do it old school. I'll send you a letter. I'll have to plan the timing, okay? So what's your mailing address? He said, there's no mail service on Conway. I said, all right, well, Joey, is there power on Conway? And he said, only people with private generators have power. I said, okay, well then, Joey, how do I let you know that I'm coming? And he said, here's what you do. You get a piece of paper, and you write down everything you want to say. Take it to the FM radio station. The DJ will read it over the air for all the islands to hear. Somebody on Panawat will hear it, and they'll let me know that you're coming. Yeah, that's right, that's right. And so Brother and I said, okay, and I went to work from Palau trying to figure out the shipping schedule. It's the supply ship that keeps all of the people living on all those islands alive. That's basically the only way to get there, except for a private plane, which is not an option. And they had changed hands, and I could not pre-plan the trip. So I said, well, I'll figure it out when I get there. And when I got back, Hermes had baptized Joey, and Joey went straight into preaching and teaching. Just a wonderful success story, exactly what you want to hear. And then. Whenever you hear of it too good, there's always an and then. And brethren, that's what we ran into with Joey. Joey, we found out, was living with his girlfriend, called her his wife, but it's a girlfriend, and they've been together for 10 years and had several children together. But brethren, they know it's not right, but they do it. Many of the Chukis do it because a marriage certificate costs $50. $50. Now remember how much they spent on power. And they will avoid buying a great many things so that they have enough money for food. It can be very desperate at times for them. And so, but they know it's not right. And I said to Joe, Joe, we got to fix this. And he said, I know. And I said, well, first I want you to move out from Anita. And Joey, are you willing to marry Anita? He said, yes. I said, Joey, is Anita willing to marry you? And he said, no. And probably because of me, the color of my skin. Because when I talk to Anita, brethren, I have never met a Chukis who had the wall up as strongly as she did. And so I had to visit and talk with Anita, break that down, get her comfortable with me, and then, Anita, are you willing to marry Joey? And yes, she was. And so that was very good. And so Joey and Anita got married. One of the things that they don't do in Chuk is have public displays of affection. You won't see the husband and wife hardly holding hands walking down the street or sitting in a pew like this and won't have an arm up around his wife. They just don't do that. This was an American-style wedding ceremony with a kiss at the end. I said, Joey, do you want to kiss Anita in front of everybody? And he said, yes, okay. So they did, and we presented them husband and wife. And then he went straight back into preaching and teaching and back to being that great success story. And so we lived in Saipan for 5 years. We lived in Palau for 9 years, making trips to Chuk all through that time. And then in February of this year, moved to Guam. Brethren, there are some social concerns, and with the raising of our children when they got to be teenagers, and social concerns there in Palau, that really required us to move off of the island. Our overseeing elders, the DeGaulle Drive Church of Christ in New Orleans, they agreed. And so what we did is, we've got the one congregation in Palau and the 3 there in Chuk. What we did is we drew a 6-hour flight radius around Palau and said, where can we move to where I can still fly into Palau and Chuk, and we won't leave these churches. We did not want to leave the churches. And with our overseeing elders, we settled on Guam. Guam is an island of 160,000 people, 2 congregations, Aston Church of Christ, North Guam Church of Christ. North Guam Church of Christ meets on Anderson Air Force Base. We are moving them off base so that we can bring visitors. Can't bring visitors on the base. So they've agreed, and we're renovating a storefront there. We have a great many Chukis brethren there in Guam, and we give them rides to services. They really can't get there another way, so we pick them up. We have so many to pick up that we rent a car on Sunday and Wednesday, every Sunday and Wednesday. Tammy goes this way, my wife Tammy goes this way, and I go this way, and we pick them up and get them to the worship service. And so we have the church in Thessalonica was on the Via Ignatian Way. It was a way for, it's the hub of the area, and people could come through, learn the gospel, then carry it to their home places. That's the way that Guam is even now. People could come there, learn the gospel, carry it to their home places. Let me come on to the end. It affects them in eternity because they have the hope of heaven when they're baptized. Brethren, it affects them in this life as well. Last put off his baptism for 2 years because he was smoking marijuana. He knew he couldn't do that and be a Christian, so it's still illegal in Juke, you see. And so he put off his baptism for 2 years, laid those cigarettes down, became a policeman, and now he arrests people who smoke marijuana. But it's a big change in his life, a change you can see in his life. His wife Catherine was baptized on the same day that he was. And Catherine, a big change in her life. She now has a husband who is engaged with a family rather than being absent. We're going to go up the hill here and see Urson. Urson was a fighter in his previous life. He's been baptized, has the hope of heaven. But now he's a very peaceful man. He goes with me. If I go to Epinuk or I go to Miari, kind of as a bodyguard kind of function. And that's very good. It's helpful. A changed life. Anthony has struggled with alcoholism for many years. He's baptized. He has the hope of heaven. Now he has the help of God to help him overcome that problem. A changed life. And then one more person inside the house, Rakinta. Rakinta is a dear friend of mine. She has a very sad story. Usually the Chukis have many, many children. She had one. Her and her husband had one. Little 2-year-old girl at the time that I came to know her there. And Rakinta's husband, you have to ask me the rest of the story later. Rakinta's husband passed away because he did what was right by the Bible. You say, well, how's that possible? When I tell you, you'll say, oh yeah, I see that. The 2-year-old daughter passed away because the family did what was wrong by the Bible. When I tell you the story, you'll say, oh yeah, I see that. So it was a member of the church who gave Rakinta this child, Jairus. And so now she has immediate family because she's in the church, you see. And so it affects them in eternity. Brethren, it affects them in this life as well. God's Word changes our lives. Maybe tonight you're visiting, or maybe you've been thinking about baptism. Maybe you're thinking, well, I wonder what God's Word will do to change my life. Well, we're wondering that too. And so if you need the prayers of the church, or you need to put your Lord on in baptism, why don't you come right now as we stand and sing.